Welcome one more day to space and harmony, a new opportunity to dive deep into the tree of lives, the authentic reality, our true being, our true essence. And today we are going to explore a bit deeper the current situation from a broader perspective. We have to see what's happening in the world. A few people asked me about it. Some even wrote to me, and we exchanged very interesting viewpoints. Externally, all this reminds me of the so-called Jubilee year that takes place more or less every 50 years, and it's a period to forgive debts, to let nature rest, to go deep into ourselves, reflect, ponder, reconsider our ways. And obviously this is happening in a partial way, especially with some people. Not everyone is taking these measures. And obviously neither banks nor politicians are going to forgive any debt. They are going to try something new, probably, but insisting in implementing draconian laws of control. Only true souls can really reconsider the ways of action without the influence of political corporations and so on. Now, in spite of all this, we have to see everything from a deeper perspective, because all we see is only the reflection of a spiritual conflict that started outside of the Earth, probably in another galaxy. And this conflict entered the solar system a long time ago. It was developed especially on Mars, the so-called planet of war, not by chance. And now those problems repeat here. Pollution, excess of technology, and so on. But the most important thing is to see with a different attitude, always connected to the center, having a holistic perspective, which is the new understanding that we require. This means we cannot continue with an attitude of lack of fear, asking to a supreme God that is somewhere hidden, nor we should focus on discussions about the best or worst politicians, political parties, religions, and obviously all this implies not worrying about aliens that may help us or destroy us and so on. And very few realize that what is taking place worldwide is not a mere pandemic or an economic crisis. Those are just the symptoms, the external symptoms. We are on a multidimensional crossroads of paths of consciousness and conscience. And this is not the first time that this takes place. In 2001, for example, the Twin Towers were demolished and the world changed. That was one of the crossroads. And there was another one in 2012, which marked a new beginning, actually. A very important galactic alignment took place, especially during the winter solstice, when the sun came out aligned with the center of the galaxy in the so-called serpent mouth that bites its own tail. This is the famous Ouroboros, which in Hebrew is known as the Great Leviathan. And this huge serpent dragon is basically the Milky Way. And there are 4 basic alignments that take place along the year. And the one that took place in 2012 marked the end of a galactic night that lasted for approximately 12,960 years. And this was the beginning of a new rising, a new galactic dawn that will last another 12,960 years. The entire cycle would be 25,920 years, but only approximately, symbolically, because the universe is accelerating. This is just a mathematical round calculation. Now, the more divine consciousness and conscience grows in humanity, the sensation of time will be smaller, and many humans will be able to go back to the source. And many positive changes may take place. Now, it doesn't seem a coincidence that one octave, 8 years have passed since 2012. And in my view, there would be 6 octaves left in order to complete 7 octaves, 49 years more or less, and thus finish a first period of transition towards a new inner reality. There are obviously ages, huge spans of time, and we are moving across those ages. And in these periods, everyone chooses their own timelines, and obviously some are even able to go beyond space-time, returning even to the non-physical Earth, the one which was mentioned in ancient times, even by Plato. The prophets also spoke about an Earth called Tavel, a fruitful land without death, full of life. And I was shocked to find that the geometric value of the word Tavel is 432. And this is important because 432 is a natural frequency we find all over nature, in cycles, the shapes, the proportions. Actually, many naturally tuned instruments have the 432 Hz as middle A. So all this has to do with the attunement, the tuning of reality. And therefore, groups of souls must be attuned, aligned with the vibration of the cosmic solar plexus, beyond rituals, traditions, beliefs based on the material dense world. And as many attune themselves to the core of reality, they find their own talents, affinities, developing their own true mission. And this is how souls raise the frequency of the planet, and they find each other. Obviously, like attracts the like, and this helps souls evolve quicker. And when they finish an evolutionary cycle, they can move together into deeper densities of consciousness, reality, and conscience, because they integrate everything they have experienced and understood. Remember that the higher the frequency of vibration, the higher the density of vibrations, and the more consciousness and conscience there is, the lesser is the energy condensation, so to say. On the contrary, when the frequency of vibration decreases, the density of matter increases, because energy condenses. This is like steam turning into water and finally into ice. And when that happens to the soul, when the soul is constricted by the dense material world, the body also gets sick. For example, in 2012, I did not attune myself with the universal vibration that was growing on the earth, and soon my mind got completely blocked, without knowing where to go, what to do. And I even traveled to Helsinki, Finland, in order to study 3 years and get a music degree, so I could earn some money teaching somewhere. But obviously that plan didn't succeed because it didn't correspond to me, at least at that time. I was doing things outside of time, outside of place, and this is why things usually don't work. By that time, I already had an idea of my divine origin in the light, something I remember since I was a child. But it was very vague. I didn't even remember that I belonged to a family of souls that express truth through art, music, visual art. I lost my sense of divine purpose, which is the most fundamental aspect in our experience here on earth, is what can make us feel that we have something to do, that there is meaning even amidst of darkness. And don't forget, the divine purpose is the second central sphere in the tree of lives, which emanates from the first global sphere, which is the I am. Our I amness emanates from the great I amness, the universal Father. And our I amness has a purpose, The third sphere is Keter, the so-called crown, and this is the mastery that we are given in order to distribute energy harmoniously. Then we have Taat Elyon, which is conscience, and this helps us know what to do, when, why, the meaningful essence of why we are here. Then we have beauty, Tiferet, which is the harmonia of the soul, where we self-recognize, and thus can perceive our true beauty and wholeness. We don't fall into the trap of self-deprecation, self-criticism, self-sabotage. All that's very dangerous because it blocks us. Then the sixth central sphere in the Tree of Lives is Yesod, which is the fullness of gifts that grows from the Infinite One, like a tree. This is why I prefer saying that the Holy One is an emanator, not a creator. The seed does not create the tree. And finally, the seventh sphere is what the Master Yeshua called Malkut Hashamayim, which is usually translated as Kingdom of Heaven, but it's better to say Foundation of Divine Reality, because we are not in a kingdom with a king nor a queen. And when we enter divine reality, the all is in all. There is a holistic expression, holonic expression, I prefer to say. And ignoring all these spheres in the central column of the Tree of Lives was actually what led me to the path of severe illness. And I almost had to leave the planet too soon because of that. Interestingly, just before that, I had researched extensively the theories about 2012 and a possible pole shift, a catastrophe, because of a massive solar flare. Many were expecting that solar flare at that time. And I think all that made me have a mind without horizon. It was as if I could not see beyond 2012, or at least I did not know what to do after that date. I didn't have a catastrophic mindset, but I allow myself to have this date as a deadline. And I suspect many took that deadline too far, and this was a self-fulfilling prophecy for them. Actually, some researchers died in 2012. For instance, David Flynn, which was researching about catastrophes in the past, and 2012 as a possible repetition of all that, he died precisely at that time. Of course, all this does not mean the sun cannot cause a pole shift. It has caused pole shifts in the past. Actually, ancient civilizations were obsessed with the calculation of the following catastrophe, and they predicted or made calculations and recorded them in calendars and monuments. Yet, none of them survived. They all were destroyed completely because of different catastrophes. And their followers, which are modern Luciferian worshippers, continue with the same mindset and even want to reduce the population so they can stay alone on the planet, developing their own technology. And this is public information written on the stones of Georgia. Anyone can see that. And many think that the New World Order is going to be established in the future, but the New World Order was already established several decades ago. Actually, if you read the US dollar, you'll find the famous Latin sentence, Annuit septis novus ordo seclorum, which means announcing the conception of a new world order. So when they began to release the US dollar, the new world order was being born, and is the system in which we live, where you cannot buy if you don't have money, where you cannot live if you don't have certain conditions. Don't forget that from the socio-political point of view, people are just numbers, voters, and workers. Governors and great leaders don't care about humanity. But not only now, this comes from ancient times, from Mesopotamia, Babylonia. That's the real origin of the New World Order. And that old system was simply reshaped, adapted to modern times, so people can think they are free and not slaves. But I think most people are working in things they don't like, they feel depressed, and they continue in a state of slavery. That's the sad situation. Now, in spite of all this, we shouldn't be focusing on the negative, on apocalyptic scenarios, on the control we are suffering, but rather on the capacity to grow, to be free from within, and be aware of this new cross-dimensional situation that we are living, because we can have a broader perspective. Only this way can we be less conditioned by the visions of the past, the lies of the present, and even the promises of the future. Because all in the past just belongs to the fourth dimension. All possible future lines are the fifth dimension. All that exists at the same time. But we must go beyond dimensions, because our being is not temporal in nature, it's immortal. We have to enter our true reality, which is a timeless now, without past, without future. And I would even say without present. It's just now. Thus we grow with the seven central spheres of the Tree of Life. And a broader view also implies seeing that the fundamental cause of the pandemic that we are experiencing all over cannot be just a virus, which is just a poorly understood factor. In general, the media talk about narrow perspectives that do not save lives. Thousands of people are dying. Medicine has failed in many cases. Most of those who have died from previous conditions that they already had, especially from chronic inflammation, lung obstruction, and so on. And very few understand that even a state of stress induced by unconscious beliefs can trigger a widespread inflammation and infection. And I know a little bit about this because years ago I suffered systemic inflammations that almost swept me off the planet. And by the way, I did not take medicines, but I did my research, my inner work, and here I am, without those inflammations, and feeling much better. Sadly, today most scientists cannot explain or don't want to explain why there are people who have the so-called COVID-19 and it does not affect them, even though they have the same genes as those who are affected, and other people have a few symptoms, that's all. But the most surprising thing is that others have been diagnosed with the COVID-19 symptoms and they did not even come into contact with possible sources of infection. They are known as isolated autochthonous cases. Now, for me, this is an example of what I said the other day about suggestion. And this is perhaps the case of massive infections as that they are living in Ecuador, in Guayaquil, and other places, where obviously there is a lack of means and political corruption, and all that makes people much more apprehensive and helpless. But the key is the state of self-suggestion that they are living. Very few realize that catastrophic news and helplessness triggers this self-suggestion and therefore low defenses. The more fear we have, the more likely we are to catch absolutely anything. As I explained in the video prior to the previous one, there was an occasion in which I saw a movie scene and I got sick. That was 20 years ago. This was because my mind associated this scene with a back injury that I had, and I got very sick. I had flu symptoms on the spot. My unconscious betrayed me completely, and it took me more than an hour to recover. And all this is also an example of why people buy so much toilet paper on the supermarket. It comes to mind also the case of babies. When one sees the other cries, then he begins to cry as well. And this is how the unconscious of most people works. If they see a critical mass of population getting sick, they think, well, I must be threatened as well, so I get sick too. Even today, many are unaware that we all carry the so-called coronaviruses within. The problem would be new mutated strains. Actually, in 2015, there was an Italian documentary that went viral, actually, that shows how Chinese scientists were by then experimenting with coronaviruses in a laboratory. They were extracting them from bats and other animals and mixing them. And this was a threat because it could pass into human population. Curiously, that same year, Mr. Gates said that the next war and world threat would be a pandemic, not atomic bombs. And obviously all this leads many to suspect that great leaders already knew something about what was going to happen. Even in 2010, there was a filtered information about a future attack on China with something like a flu that was called the Anglo-Saxon mission. And it happened, no? But we must also consider that there are more factors involved in all this. It's not that simple. Because according to experts, the coronaviruses look like some organisms that are within the cell and they go outside in order to eat up toxic substances. And these are called exosomes and are not the problem, but rather the solution. Nature uses those organisms to get rid of toxicity. And to me, this is the key because it fits the paradigm of Dr.Beschamp, which clarified many things when I was crossing the health crisis. Actually, he opposed to the theory of Dr.Pasteur, who said that the pathogens cause disease. And Dr. Beschamp said that the pathogen is nothing, the terrain is everything. The disease is caused by the toxic environment, the conditions in which those viruses and pathogens in general grow. So the problem is not the pathogen, but the dirty fish tank, as it's usually said in some circles of natural medicine. But as the medical war against pathogens is very profitable for pharmacies, then this truth is thrown into the dustbin, and those who speak openly about this are shut up. So to me, the pandemic has more to do with a state of generalized toxicity caused by electromagnetic pollution, chemical pollution, and so on. In all this, I wouldn't rule out either the so-called chemtrails that certain planes often spray over us all over. And it has been proven that these chemtrails are full of toxic metals, toxic for the organism, aluminum, for instance. And some say it is to prevent global warming because these metal particles deviate the sun rays, something which is preposterous. And it is obvious that those metals fall into the fields where there are crops, and we also breathe all that. And metals are perfect for the conductivity of electromagnetic radiations, which are all over. Therefore, this causes stress on our cells. This is increasing the number of autoimmune conditions because the immune system is stressed, and many viral infections are prone to take place because of all this. And this is precisely why a weak virus such as COVID-19 can affect people so much. Those who are worse are the ones that get sick. The more toxic the earth gets, the more is going to be affected by all sorts of pandemics. And apparently nobody is talking about all this. And let's not forget that toxicity is not just physical, but also psychic and astral. This was the main point in the video unveiling the coronaviruses, which I published almost a month ago. So all this means that pandemics and diseases would not take place if people were not so cruel and cold, if they did not allow themselves to be guided like dogs by evil inner forces and evil external guides. The immunity of light would not allow the attack of any dark condition. Unfortunately, people are asleep, they are hypnotized, so there is no point in judging anyone either. And we can see all this mirror on the streets where people step away from you, even if they wear some of those masks, or muscle, as I say, because it seems a muscle. And I've noticed that some people look strange at me because usually in the supermarket, if it is not obligatory, I don't wear gloves nor muscle. And I'm not saying people should not take these precautions if that makes them feel more safe. To me personally, that doesn't make me feel more safe because viruses go through the fabric of the masks. This is how viruses were discovered, actually, in the 19th century. And wearing mask would also be like giving an order to my subconscious and unconscious that I'm not safe, that I'm not protected. Moreover, I think all this is being used as an experiment to see social reactions. Some are checking how much people can stand draconian measures of mass control. But don't worry about all this because those who try to go too far will pay dearly and will stay in their time dump, trapped, being recycled all over and over again, changing their skin like lizards, so to say. Some politicians and bankers have already fallen under COVID-19. Many of them have died. That's not a coincidence. And for sure, many don't even understand that all this goes back many thousands of years. Much of what we see today is the continuation of a cosmic war, which in this solar system took place on Mars, as I said, and passed into the Earth, especially Atlantis, which was destroyed because humans with alien souls altered the climate by playing too much with their technologies. And all this was symbolically represented with the war of Yahweh, Jehovah, fallen existence, against Baal, Lucifer, Enlil against Enki, the lord of the earth, Zeus against Prometheus, who in the myth wants to help humanity and gives her the fire that he stole from the gods. But later on he fought a battle against stepmother nature, Zeus, and he lost. He sank deeper with humanity. So it is not smart to place ourselves on one side or the other. Many people often support Enki as benefactor of humanity, but the Enki-type beings are trapped in this matrix. They were chained by the opponent to the rock, the dense materiality of this fallen existence. The only solution was given by the master that brought the true original Tree of Lives, Master Yoshua, and all those who have been able to step aside from slavery. And now those who remain connected to the Tree of Lives, the true reality, have the chance to go deeper into a new reality collectively. And I can assure you that everything we are living today will mark a before and after. However, I'm afraid that not everyone will be able to feel the transformative change because they are too concerned with information from the media, which is based on fallen science, economic interests, politics, religion, the culture of entertainment, all things leading to the chase of confusion. And all this means that even though there will be a before and after, many will continue trying to live or exist as coldly as before. There lies the big mistake because that will perpetuate the plagues for many. Below I leave the link to the video that I made last year about the 10 plagues of Egypt. Which are associated with the tree of knowledge of good and bad because the incomplete tree has 10 spheres and not 13 as the true tree of life. And back then I entitled the video The 10 Satanic Crowns. Now what a coincidence that a year later so many people are affected by a new type of corona virus, which means crown virus. And remember that the crown, Keter, is our mastery, our ability to distribute energy harmoniously, and there has been a massive loss of crowns of life. They have been stolen. Curiously, I also checked the article I wrote on February 2nd in the blog before anyone was speaking too much about the COVID-19, at least here in Europe and in the United States. And I was surprised to see that even then I said that the coronavirus that the Chinese were having was a reflection of an inner global chaos. However, those of us who usually tell these truths are usually persecuted, criticized, and this can be, for this reason, compared to the story of the Israelites crossing the Red Sea, chased by the Pharaoh and his army. So we should not forget that when they all crossed, the sea smashed the army. And that can be understood inwardly. The Israelites were not a human race, but a group of souls that overcame the forces of the moon, the sun, and the planets, Isis, Ra, El. And thus they entered another inner reality beyond their own ego. But they, unfortunately, fell stuck in a desert. They were deceived by satanic influences. Their egoic nature woke up again, developing a religious mentality, and therefore began to worship the golden calf, which is basically a symbol for accusation, evil language, and the union with fallen spirits. And now the same thing is taking place all over, because we are crossing the Red Sea of low emotions because of the global situation. And the ego, the egoic dark nature of many people, is somehow being pushed down, forced to stay quiet, shut up at home. And in many cases, something more authentic is shining because of all this. I can even perceive something different in the environment. Nature is recovering little by little. The vegetation is getting greener, and something inside even is more free, shining from the infinite reality where we came from. And this makes some of us feel something that cannot be touched by death, even if our body dies someday. With all this, I have even recovered my passion for singing as a healing way of self-expression. And a brother of light from Argentina even sent me a composition of his, since he is also a composer. And the other day I started to make some improvised arrangements on the song on the piano with the sound of strings as well. And they came out spontaneously. I liked them, I sent them to him, he liked them too. So we both started working on the song, including the lyrics, and something very interesting is coming out. And I have to say, it's been a long time since I composed that way for the last time. And this is filling me with joy because I'm recovering the passion for playing and composing and singing. Hope to show more songs soon. As you may know, I already played some of my music in previous videos. I opened a section for that in the web. And I have the intention to publish more music even in the channel I opened for that, Fernando en Harmony. I think it's a perfect way to convey subtle messages and open the way for a deeper transformation and realization. This is the moment for doing things like this. And I see the global change even in people who write to me. They are not many, but the few are already oriented towards a great change and are aware of something new. Others that contacted me in the past seem to have been swallowed up by the cold sea of unconsciousness. I'm not to judge anyone, because humans in general are influenced by hypnotic powers. And even after venturing into the world of spirituality, To some degree, everyone is affected by the cold poison of the scorpion. But in general, there is a greater awakening as a result of what is happening all over. And I was recently surprised with the case of a young filmmaker from Los Angeles who makes documentaries and short clips about the so-called paranormal, scary world. And the other day he contacted me for an interview since he was interested in the subjects I touch in the channel. And at first I told him that my profile does not fit with that scary world. But he insisted in keeping in touch, even if I didn't want to be interviewed. And to me that seemed very honest of him. So we exchanged more impressions via email. He told me about his new podcast program, The All-Seeing One, where he intends to publish more spiritually based subjects. And seeing that he could have genuine interest, I decided to be interviewed. And we talked in an interview about the fallen architects, pre-Adamites, Yeshua, Ishua, Yisu, and other profound subjects. And we have even arranged another interview, this time on the subject of divine I amness. And at the moment, he uploaded the last interview. Below I leave the link to his All-Seeing One podcast, in case you are interested, and also the name of his mystery channel. I understood he might open another space for spiritually based subjects. And to me all this proves that new links are being established all over. The global network of conscience and consciousness is growing, and all this is helping to go deep into a new sense of reality. Little by little, more and more people are waking up. And for now I think it's enough. Thank you very much for listening. Leave your comments and questions if you wish. That contributes to promote the channel and make it more accessible to other people. If this was helpful and inspiring to you, please give thumbs up. That promotes the channel as well. And if you want to receive notification of these weekly videos, always in English and Spanish, click on the bell and the subscribe button. And until the next time, blessings of unconditional love and modified life, integral conscience, and deep, blissful serenity.